Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Hey y'all, hey. So today we will be discussing the Freedom Summer of 1964. And in this picture, we have SNCC's training of resistance, basically, and teaching nonviolence. And so you see this young lady here, bless her heart, balled up on the ground. This is taking place at a college in Ohio, an all-women's college, but as I will go on into the Mississippi Summers Project, a lot of the volunteers, which you can see back here in the background, were majority white, middle-class students who volunteered, college students who volunteered to go on this very dangerous, life-threatening journey to desegregate the South, to fight a battle that not even Southern blacks wanted to fight. So Freedom Summer, also called the Mississippi Summer Project, it took place from June 14, 1964 to August 20th, 1964. And this was a voter registration drive aimed at increasing the number of registered black voters in Mississippi, as well as the attempt to educate black Mississippi students to further their civil rights activism, to teach them civil rights activism through freedom schools. So we'll get there. The Mississippi Summer Project was founded really by this young man here. His name is Mr. Robert Bob Moses, who he was a SNCC activist, and he later became the director of the Council of Federated Organizations, which was a coalition of organizations led by SNCC that coordinated the efforts of the civil rights groups within states, especially in Mississippi. And he became that in 1962. Now, the Mississippi Summer Project, as I stated, addressed education, especially because Mississippi's education system was separate but equal. And so they did establish 41 freedom schools which included more than 3,000 students throughout the state of Mississippi. In addition to math, reading, and other courses such as science, they also taught black students black history, philosophy, and the civil rights movement, leadership skills, and intellectual and practical tools to carry on their activism once the summer volunteers left. So the point of this project was to draw the national attention to the violence and oppression experienced by Mississippians. It was stated that rural Mississippi was very hard to crack as far as getting black people into activism, engaging them into voting. They were, I wouldn't say corrupted, but they were torn up by a corrupt system. They were disenfranchised by the legal system, which the legal system included Klansmen. I did mention the Mississippi Sovereign Commission. That was a agency built on segregation, or making sure segregation lasts throughout the entity of the state, and fought back and also caused imprisonment of others if you try to fight segregation. So Mr. Moses, he noted that there was a lot of success in Mississippi in 1963 during mock elections from the Freedom Vote Drive campaign that he did. And so he decided to include or solicit white students again to take part of the Mississippi Summer Project of 1964. In letters that he sent out to these potential volunteers, he said, hey, this is the political climate. You will be likely arrested. You will need bond money. You will need food money, lodging, personal items. Like, baby, you had to have coin to go on these things because you was basically, or your parents were basically supporting you or funding you. There were no other fundings anyways that was mentioned, unlike the Freedom Riders that I saw earlier in 1961, where they were students who received scholarships, such as Mr. Stokely. Now, they were also required to have a Mississippi driver's license if you were to drive throughout Mississippi, and make sure that your car was registered there. Volunteers were also asked to prepare for detrimental experiences by reading books. And on June 14th, 1964, the first group of summer volunteers began training at Western College for Women in Oxford, Ohio. And that was the first picture I showed. So that was what's taking place here in Oxford, Ohio at a women's college. And among the first wave to arrive in Mississippi on June 15th were two students from New York. So the two students on the outside that we have Mr. Andrew, who's on the right, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, who's on the left. 1 week after the first groups came to Oxford, Mississippi, these three persons, Mr. James Chaney in the middle, he was a local Mississippian, they went missing after they went to investigate a church burning in Philadelphia, Mississippi. 6 weeks later, their beaten bodies were discovered and recovered, and it was speculated that they were killed by Klansmen and the help of local police. So prior to their bodies being discovered, MLK was invited to Greenville, Mississippi to speak, to encourage Black Mississippians to vote despite the acts of intimidation and violence, because this is prior to the bus boycotts and all the Montgomery marches. So a lot of people did look up to MLK. He understood the threat of violence. But 3 weeks after King's visit, these boys' murdered bodies were found, and Mr. Schwerner, hope I'm saying it right, he was particularly someone that the Imperial Wizard wanted because he lived in Mississippi. He was known as a dedicated court activist who was assisting Black people to vote, and the Imperial Wizard saw him as a bad influence. That's the young man who's now on the right over here. So on their way back to Mississippi, these three boys were in a car together, and the deputy, Cecil Price, pulled them over. He was a Klansman member. He said they were speeding. He held them in custody while other Klansmen were prepared for their burial. The deputy eventually released them, and the boys was in a car chase and cornered in the woods, shot by Klansmen, and then buried in pre-dug out graves. When the news of their disappearance got out, the FBI converged on Mississippi to investigate. With the help of an informant, agents were able to learn about the Klan's involvement and found the body. So here's where their bodies were found, in a makeshift, what are they called? Dam, a earth dug dam in Neshoba County. This is a picture of the car that they were in that was burnt out and left in the woods. So in Mississippi, they refused to prosecute the several persons who were responsible for these three young men's death. And the federal government decided to charge 18 men with conspiracy to violate the civil rights of Schwerner, Goodman, and Chaney. Bowers and Price and 5 other men were convicted, 8 were acquitted, and an all-white jury were deadlocked on the other 3. On the 41st anniversary of the 3 murders on June 21st, 2005, Edward Ray Killen was found guilty of 3 counts of manslaughter. The 80-year-old Klansman was an outspoken racist and part-time Baptist minister, and he was sentenced to 60 years in prison, and he died there in 2018. Now, the voter registration in Mississippi was not greatly impacted by Freedom Summer. 1,700 Blacks did attempt to vote in Mississippi or register to vote, but only 1,200 were successful. It was noted that the Freedom Summer Project did help with support for the civil rights movement throughout the country. And of course, Lyndon B. Johnson got the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed, as well as another Voting Rights Act, of 1965. So it did have an impact to garner support and show the nation how serious racism is. And I say that with such a breath of trying to exhale, because to be honest, we are still waiting to exhale in this day. That's why I chose to focus on civil rights, because even though it's not happening in your home, it's not happening to you, it's not happening to people that you actually even get to see, it took white northern children to come down to Mississippi and do something about it that didn't even touch them at first. And if it wouldn't have happened, it's more than likely it would have took longer for the civil rights movement to be successful, to get the right to vote, to get the right to be treated as equal citizens.